All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Record button has been pressed almost 5 minutes after the hour. So wanted to thank everybody who is taking a little time out of their day to join us to have a conversation around the secure architecture for AWS. This is the fourth happy hour panel discussion the PTP team has done in, I think, the last 6 weeks. So we've had some really good conversations. It's been fun for me to get to talk to experts in some of the different areas that we work and just chat about subjects and do it in a manner and a venue that's fun and comfortable and relaxed, but I think that we're able to kind of extract out some information that's been valuable to those that have participated. So appreciate again everybody that's taken the time to come on with us this afternoon. So part of what we do as part of this sheltered in place virtual happy hour is we're all, if you so wish, if you have a drink, we want to just kind of share that with the group so you have an idea of what we're enjoying. So I live in the Dallas, Texas area, so I typically try to go with something that is unique to this area. So today's version this is the third out of fourth time I've chosen the Tups Brewery. I happen to really like that brewery, but this is called the Evil Dangster IPA. So what makes this one a little bit unique is it is distilled hop oils. So a little bit different way of introducing hoppiness into an IPA. It's actually not as big and bold as some of them. It's kind of crisp and smooth, but it's a good drink, especially on a relatively warm summer day. So when we go through in just a minute and go through the introduction of the panelists and allow each of you guys to be able to talk a little bit about yourselves and who you are and your background. If you are enjoying something, please share it with the group and kind of let us know what you're drinking, as if we were sitting around Percival in the office down by PTP in Norwood. But before we kind of get into some of that discussion, it would be terrible if the marketing guy didn't do a little bit of shameless promotion of some of the things that we've been doing lately. So did just want to make everybody aware of, we are archiving on our website. If you go to the resources section of ptp.cloud, you'll see a webinar archive, and you can get to Cisco WebEx and see some of the recordings of the previous events that we've done. So feel free to get there and see some of the interesting things that we've done. Also are fairly consistent with our blog page and think that we're producing some pretty interesting content from a blog perspective. Some of it is more business oriented and some of it's more technical. Feel free to sift through some of the things that we put out on the blog page, or subscribe to our newsletter on ptp.cloud, and anytime we publish a blog or something like that, you'll be notified. But every 2 to 3 weeks or so, we should have some interesting new content there. And then feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's kind of a platform that we do a lot of communication about these events and some of the other things that we're doing, some of the trials and low cost and no cost proof of concepts that we're doing with some of our technology partners. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is as an organic, small growing business, obviously the work that we do and the quality of work that we do and what our customers think about us is huge. So we strive to exceed expectations on every level with every engagement that we work with our customers. So if you happen to work with PTP and you've loved what we've done for you and know other people that could benefit from that, we'd love if you'd let them know about us and what we do. And if we conduct a meeting with that company to talk about some new business, happy to give some service credits back to you from a go-forward basis just to say thank you. So that's my shameless marketing promotion before we kind of jump into the content. So with that, let's talk and introduce our participants this afternoon. So just myself, I mentioned, live in Dallas. I'm responsible for the managed services organization at PTP that we call Peak Plus. This is our network security and cloud operations team, functions on a 24/7 basis, supporting our customers and like I said, their networks, their data security in the cloud, et cetera, and then also have marketing responsibility here at PTP. And then I will just kick it to Ethan and then let the group kind of introduce themselves from there. So Ethan, how about you and what you drinking this afternoon? Mute. I got you.
I did it.
There we go.
My fault. So I stuttered anyway. So Ethan Simmons, I'm managing partner at Pinnacle PTP. For this conversation, I manage a relationship with both AWS and Cisco, so I'm heavily involved with both of those, strategic partners for us. Our other strategic partner is Percival Brewing Company. They're in our building here in Norwood, so I'm having their SIP IPA, which is their shelter-in-place IPA. Even the beers have acronyms. Cisco and AWS are bad enough for acronyms. The beer has acronyms now, so that's what I'm drinking.
Great. And then Chris is not going to be able to join us this afternoon. Unfortunately, he is out on site doing some engineering work for one of our customers who had some urgent needs. So Chris is a longtime CCIE that leads our engineering practice. He would have been great for some of the conversation, but one thing I just wanted to mention, I was going to do that at the close, but right now while I'm thinking about it is, if anybody in the audience wants to have a follow-up kind of deeper dive conversation, do some virtual whiteboarding and really get down into some details, obviously we can bring Chris in, we can work with David and Tish on the Cisco team, we can work with our AWS counterparts, and we can bring some really technical resources to bear. So feel free to reach out to any of us here or to your account manager, and we can certainly set something like that up. So Chris is unavailable, but Steve is available, and so Steve, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Steve Hoevenaar. I am drinking a gin and tonic. The gin comes from Castle and Key, which is a bourbon place in Kentucky. I went on a bourbon tour last year, and they're new. Well, it's an old building that they're refurbishing, but when you're new at bourbon, I guess you make gin because it takes years to get bourbon ready. So I bought some of their gin, so kind of the standard gin and tonics. Good stuff. I'm the Director of Security at Security Services at PTP. I like to say that we are anything and everything security team, or we're going to be the security team for a company. But I think we have the experience and knowledge to do whatever you need from a security perspective.
Awesome. Appreciate it. David?
Hey, everybody. This is David Ward from Cisco. I'm the Alliance Manager for AWS. I also cover Google for the Americas, so that keeps me fairly busy. And I've been at Cisco almost 2 years. I worked at AWS and Microsoft before that.
Oh, small company guy, I see.
Yeah, exactly.
Small company, yeah.
And Tish, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tish Scarborough. I'm drinking a blood orange of non-alcoholic drink. It's a San Pellegrino, and I got it from Harris Teeter. Came in a 6-pack, so there's that. But I support David as a cloud security architect at Cisco, of course. So obviously, I support not only AWS but also GCP as well as Azure. And yeah, thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Awesome, great to have you. So supporting AWS, Azure, and GCP, that is a big load of technology to be able to support. You got your hands full, girl.
Absolutely.
All right. So wanted to just set things up before we kind of get into the panel discussion, just to kind of frame up kind of what we're seeing a lot of people, and just what our customers are up against. And so this data came from a Gartner blog that was fairly recent, late last fall, is the cloud secure? And just mentioning through 2025, 99% of the cloud security failures would be the customer's fault. And so I think really that the message here is that the question about is the cloud secure is less relevant than it was, say, 5+ years ago. The tools are there, the capabilities for configurations are there. It's a matter really of an organization applying the right policies, the right processes, and the right tools in place to ensure they're doing their part. And so we'll talk a little bit more about responsibilities in terms of the customer and the actual cloud provider as we get into this. But this kind of resonated in terms of, it's about harnessing those tools and the capabilities that are there for you, and really putting those into motion. And really that comes down to people, process, and tools like most of IT operations does. Similarly, I wanted to share just a little bit of, hey, here's how things have changed in the last few months as we've all been socially distancing, and remote workers like us are no longer going into offices. This one is a kind of a quick hit in a short period of time because it's just March, so it doesn't represent what's happened in April or so far into May. But at the point that this statistic was put together in the middle of April, it measured a 41% increase in just the second part of the month of March in terms of the increase in VPN demand. And I think that the interesting part here is just, and some of what we were working with our customers is some of our customers were ready for this in terms of just how their architecture was built and what tools they had in play. And it made it very easy for them to kind of scale. They had that elasticity that was available. And some were not, and some had more significant challenges making this happen than others. Needed new infrastructure. Infrastructure was on back order because so many people were in that position. And so it really has been, a really, case study is maybe a bad word, but a really good indicator in terms of who was ready for this change in technology and in more of a distributed architecture. Last week, we had a discussion around collaboration and conferencing and calling because Cisco WebEx released a really interesting bundle that brought all these capabilities together. So you had kind of enterprise tools at a very low price point. The statistic that blew me away last week when we were talking to Todd Wilson of WebEx was from February to April. So that 3-month span, WebEx went from 7 billion minutes per month to over 25 billion. So over a 3x increase in 3 months in terms of the capacity on that platform. So it is massive. And this change is obviously having effect on workers and the ability to, obviously be able to support that. And then in the discussion today, really a matter of how do you provide all that elasticity and provide the security to go along with it. So we're going to get into the panel discussion this afternoon. I've got some questions for each of the panelists, allow them to kind of share their areas of expertise with the group. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to shoot those out in the chat in WebEx, and we'll be happy to get those to the panelists. And so I think I will just kick it off, and I'll start. I kind of wanted to start at a fairly high level since we talked just a second ago about you've got the cloud provider's responsibility, and then you've got obviously the user's responsibility. So this is going to go to Ethan, to you, and this is really kind of this is the fundamentals, if you will, of the cloud security model. So for those that are already, and we're talking kind of specific to AWS today, but for those that are in AWS, those that are in the cloud, I'm sure you've heard about the shared security model, but for those that aren't, or maybe just a refresher to kind of set things up, Ethan, do you mind just kind of high level describing what that shared security model means and kind of the impact to it from a cloud provider and a customer perspective?
Sure. I think most of the customers we're working with have probably matured as the cloud has matured, but there was early on definite misperception of what the cloud providers did as part of their service. So there was the impression of, people would move workloads, servers out to the cloud provider, and they'd assume that it's taken care of, where, that's obviously not the case. There's sort of a, hardware abstraction layer down, physical security that the cloud providers own, but from the operating system up, the customer is still responsible for the security. So the network design patching, vulnerabilities, that type of stuff is still, on the onus of the customer. So we have a lot of customers that are, probably weren't prepared to operate in that, in that new paradigm, didn't have the right tools, didn't have the right visibility. So we spent a lot of time helping those customers provide, get that visibility and the controls that they needed from a security standpoint to operate effectively, in the cloud. And once they, I think everyone understood that and understand the guardrails and the, tools that they need to have in place. I think most people have now realized, okay, that the cloud is a secure place to operate, and we've seen great acceleration in adoption of the cloud, over the last couple of years.
Yeah, Ethan, let me say too. I worked at Microsoft as cloud was coming out there, and then moving to AWS was interesting because in the beginning, customers really didn't understand it at all, right? And you had to repeat over and over again and explain it. And I've definitely seen it get better. Customers are starting to understand it more. But AWS still has to lead all the time with the whole customer responsibility matrix, and customers still don't truly understand it when they tell them you are responsible for this stuff. I think there's still a lot of confusion, and that's why I think this customer around Cisco, a lot of our products line up really well around that, the customer piece of it.
Yeah, I was on an IDC call earlier today, and they were talking about how the ramp and the acceleration in cloud growth is in the SMB mid-market space. So obviously the enterprise companies have that, knowledge and understanding, but you're seeing the majority of the net new cloud adoption is from these smaller companies. So there is a concern out there that they're not adopting, they don't have the right resources, the right, staff to effectively put the right security controls in place. So there is some concern about a new wave of, you're going to hear about security incidents, that type of stuff from, I guess, these newbies that are moving out to the cloud that haven't really considered all of the security needs that they may have.
And we're an organization that we have the life sciences competency with AWS and are an advanced consulting partner. And so we're working with a lot of biotechnology companies in the Boston area, also a lot of healthcare companies. And so, you get the question that comes up, hey, is the cloud HIPAA compliant? And obviously Cisco or AWS can demonstrate of their data centers the HIPAA compliance, but that doesn't determine that the customer then is compliant. They still have to have their policies and procedures of how they're maintaining their data on top of the cloud. And so it really is that shared security model, and it's critical to start there and understand responsibilities. So that's why I felt like it was a good starting point for this afternoon's conversation, just to kind of set the table there. David, I think I'll come to you. So, there's different frameworks for security, and AWS talks about, kind of a well-architected framework. But from a security perspective with Cisco, Cisco defines 4 key pillars to address the architecture for cloud security. Wonder if you could just kind of share for the audience what those are and kind of how they apply, just to kind of set that up.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So the first one's visibility, second one's segmentation, threat protection, and then identity and access management. And we have products that align up to all those. So Tetration, which is our workload protection product, is great for visibility. StealthWatch Cloud, especially as these companies move into the cloud, they're used to managing stuff on-prem. AWS provides information, but it's only AWS specific information, right? There's no way to necessarily look across their entire on-prem and cloud environment. That's really what StealthWatch Cloud brings to the environment. And then if you add an Azure or a Google Cloud in there as well, suddenly you've got all these different platforms and nothing to sort of bring them all together. And that's really where Cisco hits that sweet spot is, if you think about multi-cloud, if you have on-prem and you have AWS, that's multi-cloud from our perspective, right? Even without any of the providers in there. AMP is another product there for visibility that can help show where there's problems. The second angle is segmentation. So really making sure that if somebody were to get in your network, that they can't really move around very much and jump from one network to another or one asset to another. Next generation firewall, ASAV, again, Tetration can really help from a segmentation perspective. And again, I think it's a little, for companies, it's a little complicated in the beginning to get that segmentation down and figure it out. But once they do it, then it really helps protect their environment and it makes them feel safer that there aren't these, bad guys moving around inside their environment. Third one's threat protection. So primary product there is next generation firewall, AMP for endpoints, Umbrella, Cisco Umbrella is another good one there for threat protection, just identifying if something is your network, being able to find it right away and making sure that there's not bad assets sitting on your network for long periods of time that you don't know about. That's always tough when that happens. And the last one's identity access management. And that's a fairly new one for Cisco. Duo is our product for that. Acquisition, I guess, about a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago when we purchased Duo. But a really great solution. We're seeing a lot of traction. We have some quick starts and things like that with Duo around with AWS that we see some really good pickups on before. So if you're interested in Duo, that's definitely a product, to kind of get excited about and something new to Cisco's portfolio.
We're seeing a lot of customers that haven't really thought through security around like root credentials and stuff like that. So there's some pretty basic stuff where we're, using Duo and some other products for multi-factor authentication to even protect just their keys for root access. So there's a lot of different security concerns that we're trying to address across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. And I think, Tish, I wanted to kind of kick it to you from here. So David kind of set up the four main pillars, talked a little bit about the products, but in your role as an architect, you're having probably deeper conversations with customers on a daily basis and trying to solve some challenges. Maybe you could share with the audience a few kind of key areas that you're seeing more often than not that are really having some value in terms of mitigating security risk.
Yeah, absolutely. So first want to say Ethan did a really great job explaining the share responsibility model. That's something I definitely, yeah, it's definitely something I harp on a lot because it's overlooked typically in discussions. And if you attend any sort of like AWS conference, that's actually one of the things that they talk heavily on. That's one of their best practices. So understanding that, AWS is going to protect their facilities and everything it takes to run their cloud environments, and the customer has to protect their data, people, processes is important. So when I'm having these, conversations with these customers, I'm understanding, first of all, where they are at in their cloud adoption journey, whether they are just starting out, whether they've already spun up a couple of applications in the cloud, or if they have a really solidified practice. And I start the conversation from more so the challenges that we're seeing, which is typically visibility and control. So, start framing their mind around where are you lacking at? Like, what do you want to see? How do you plan to see it? I don't necessarily go in with the conversation of a product pitch, but just more so a framework, a mindset. And then we kind of get into the idea of when they start migrating, how do they plan to protect those actual workloads? And then how are they going to protect, their applications, from a pod perspective and containers, Kubernetes, excuse me, if that application talks to another application, how are you securing that communication between the two? Or if you're having the web server talking to an app server, talking to the DB server, how are you securing all of that? And then back to the point that was made earlier around protecting your users. So it's more so having those sort of conversations of visibility and control. And then from there, we kind of move into products, right? And like David had mentioned before, I specifically spend more time talking about Tetration, Stealthwatch Cloud, and Duo because they really address those pain point areas of visibility and control.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. That's great. So Steve and I are in operational roles. There's other members of our team in the operational roles, and so when you think about things like Stealthwatch and the ability to grab data from all your different data points around the environment and then have a single pane of glass and say, hey, there's one threat, because you see management platforms of my Firepower and my AMP, and and I know Cisco's making huge improvement with Threat Grid and bringing all that together, but that's what it takes, right? Is it takes for a security engineer can't be in 5 or 6 different platforms. There's not enough hours in the day to do that. So it's really about pulling all that data together. So visibility, I think that one resonates huge for a guy that's operational, really understands the efficiencies of that. So on the operational path, Steve, we were having a conversation the other day. The value of Umbrella is just massive, especially, as we were seeing, you've got so many remote users and back several months ago, it was those users were in Starbucks. So now they're not necessarily in Starbucks, but obviously we still need to provide some protection. But so some recent changes, things are a little bit different, but Steve, describe some of the ways you're seeing Cisco benefit company security with user access to cloud applications. And I know this kind of comes back to the umbrella side, but you had brought up some really good points the other day and thought it'd be good to share with the group.
Yeah, I think, when you talk from a security perspective, there's this thing called split tunneling that is a huge no-no and has been a huge no-no forever within the security world. We don't like it. So traditionally, you would, if you went to work at home, you would connect to a VPN. That VPN would go into a company's network. You would be forbidden to go to your own web browser and go out your own internet connection or go to any other network. But we're seeing problems. Obviously, a continuity plan in the past was we're going to send our essential workers going home to because there was a disaster within the company. This is a kind of a world disaster. Some people have sent their entire work staffs home. The VPNs weren't built for that. The ingress pipes going into the company weren't built for that. So what do? Well, software as a service, right? Software as a service is great. However, with split tunneling not being allowed, you're still backhauling all that internet traffic into the company's network, and that doesn't solve the problem. So the things that do solve the problem are things like AMP and Umbrella. So you have AMP, which is security intelligence on the endpoint. It's going to look more than just a virus software that's looking for signatures. You're making behavioral decisions from an AMP perspective. On the other end, you also have Umbrella, which is a safety net to try to, it uses the Talos database to keep you guys from going to nefarious sites. So that being said, you put those two products in place, and it's not that as a security guy, I'm going to say split tunneling is great, let's do it. I am going to say, however, your risk has gone from here to way down. So now companies can say, we're going to take that risk. We're going to go ahead and hit our IM tools like WebEx Teams, or we're going to hit Office 365 directly from the internet connection in a user's home rather than backhauling that through our environment. And I think that's one of the biggest things from a security perspective that I see that Cisco products like AMP and Umbrella really help.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. So Ethan, question back to you, because both David and Tish brought up some really interesting points around some of the product sets. But I think for the audience, sometimes there's the question of, hey, AWS has got a lot of stuff and a lot of technologies that are available. Then obviously, Cisco is a software company with network and security and cloud capabilities. Can you just talk a little bit about the, when a customer should be thinking about native tools that could be in AWS and when they need to be thinking about third-party tools about bolting on and allowing access to the environment? Can you just kind of describe that at a high level for what you think around that subject?
Sure. So a couple of things. I think AWS always sort of gets knocked a little bit for having tools that don't give great visibility or hard to use, or you need an engineering team to get them to work. And sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not true. But I think what we're seeing is that there's certain tools that customers are used to. They're used to using Firepower or ASAV. They want that same interface, the same management tools. They don't want to retrain staff. So if they can go and take that same software interface and management tools that they're used to and deploy those into AWS and use those that way, it's a great option for that customer, because they don't have to retrain their engineering team or their security team. They can use the same tools natively that they know well. There's also, there are tools that do provide better visibility from an AWS standpoint, where a lot of the AWS tools, CloudTrail, CloudWatch, pump out massive logs, but you can have all the data's there, but who's looking at the data? How do you, effectively get the visibility that you need? So, something like StealthWatch Cloud or some of the Firepower appliance things, and then also even some of the stuff that PTP does with our Fluency platform, we're able to ingest all those logs and then present them back with the visibility that those security teams need to actually, see the event and do something with it rather than, sifting through tons and tons of data, and where that just causes delay in the amount of time it takes to respond.
Yeah.
So we're trying. Our whole goal is to try and reduce that window and allow those security analysts to respond faster to reduce the amount of time that those bad actors are potentially in the environment.
Mm-hmm. And I think, as a partner organization, as a consulting services organization, we recognize every customer and their requirements, their environments, the way they're distributed, what they're doing with their data, et cetera, is a little bit different. And so maybe different suggestions, one size doesn't necessarily fit all, but being able to look at, hey, where to get the best value for the dollars? How do you get the most, capability and throughput and cost and security? And we'll obviously help bring those solutions to bear. Goal is, obviously for us is, success for our customers in delivering information back to users, helping benefit the business, and doing that in a secure and cost-effective way. So, So with that,
hey Gary,
yeah,
can I add something there? This is David.
please.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too that I lost my train of thought. From the AWS perspective, lost where I was going with it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to come back to you.
Too much rum and coke.
What was he drinking again?
Go ahead.
What was David drinking?
Maybe I'll jog your memory with my next question back to you, because I was going to come to you with I saw kind of an interesting comment, I think it was a week or two ago, from Cisco CEO Chuck Robbins, and he had commented to some media outlet that he didn't see AWS as a competitor to Cisco in any way. Maybe just describe the kind of alignment there from at least maybe from Chuck's perspective, and how customers can benefit from these two kind of behemoth tech giants in some level of what I would call co-opetition, kind of different paths, but the ability to kind of join together and deliver value back to customers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was actually at Davos when Chuck was asked that question. So I think it was back in February. And we use that quote all the time when we're trying to get Cisco to understand why AWS and Cisco should work together, because even inside of Cisco, not everybody always understands that they're not a competitor. It's really effective. If you think about it, AWS is number one in the cloud. Cisco, we consider ourselves being number one on-prem. And so when you bring those two together, there's a lot of synergies, right? And so all the security products that we're talking about, they help secure the customer's data and the security when they're in cloud. And actually, the example I was going to use, I thought about what I was going to say now was, AWS has Outpost now, which is their sort of rack that they can have dropped into a data center. And the cloud providers are not always very realistic understanding of our enterprise customers and what they have to do, because AWS kind of expects the customer to say, oh, we're going to ship you this rack, give it power and plug it into the network and turn it on, and then we'll manage it from there. You don't have to do anything, right? And the customers are not going to just plug that thing in and turn it on and not manage it, right? So we've been working with AWS to make sure that our ACI integrates in with Outpost, and so we can manage that device and just bring it into that same fabric. And so sort of eliminate some of that idea of AWS is like, oh, just plug it into your network and turn it on and it'll work, to Cisco saying we really need to manage that device and make it part of the overall network and those pieces of it. So I think that's kind of a good example of the synergies of where we work together. Cisco are a big consumer of AWS. And so a lot of our products are moving to AWS. WebEx, part of the way we hit those 25 billion minutes in that month was because we were scaling on AWS and using their cloud to help bring those capabilities online. And we've scaled more into AWS as part of this environment. So that's another good example of how we work together. And that actually helps because AWS starts to look at us as with a 360 view and saying, okay, Cisco, you're buying stuff from us, your products are out, you have products in AWS Marketplace, plus you're developing our products. So, we have a lot of different ways that we're engaging with AWS today. And I think that's why he says that, is because it's not really a competition. And where we see the best results when AWS and Cisco work together with a partner, everybody's deals get bigger. AWS's deal gets bigger, Cisco's deals get bigger, and the partners' deal all get bigger. That's where and that's what AWS says too, right? When the partners work together, the deals get bigger across the board. So.
Awesome. So along that note, I'll just kind of finish that thread back to Ethan. We were chatting, I think, just before this conversation, but there's kind of an economics discussion or also around with AWS and kind of either bring your own licensing versus consumption of things through the marketplace. And Ethan, I know you know a lot about that. Maybe just some thoughts there in terms of that model and preferences and what customers should be thinking about.
Sure. So I think there's two things. One conversation. So we took our, sort of traditional Cisco CCIEs that were on our team, and as a career path and a development, really push them to become AWS and Azure cloud architects. And really from a networking standpoint, so we see a huge gap in customers where typically what we're seeing is that their DevOps teams are building applications, they get them going, and then it's thrown over the fence to IT, and they say, IT, go deliver this application to the end user. The DevOps guys had no real thought around security, how this is going to perform over low speed links, or what's how are we going to protect the communication between application server and database servers, and where do all this sit. So, we're seeing a lot of the IT teams struggle with, how do I do this and how do I make all that happen? So, I guess I'd like to say we had the foresight into having those teams that have spent so much time now helping customers architect and extend their on-prem network, whether it's ACI or firewalls or their security, controls into the cloud, and able to easily do that. Where a lot of the other customers that we see a lot of homegrown type of solutions where there's a AWS tool here, there's another manufacturer's tool there for firewalls, a different load balancer, there's different security mechanisms, and it's a mess and it's hard to manage. So we spend a lot of time trying to help customers, ease that overall management and the tool set that they're using. So that's one piece. The other piece that we talk about a lot is engineers really never had to think about the economics of when I make a design decision. Before it's like, okay, I bought a router, I pay for this MPLS circuit, I pay for this internet circuit, and it's a fixed cost, and it goes to finance, and I don't have to deal with it. But now every decision that those engineers make around the network design and the security design has a cost ramification, because you're paying for it by the minute, by the second, by the hour. And, when I need to be very cognizant if I'm going to terminate this connection in one region and move data to another region, or if I'm going to use a direct connect or use Megaport or use one of the other connectivity options, what's the cost ramification to that? So it's very different mindset that the engineers need to have now than they ever had before. And really something that I used to. I know the engineers on our team always come back and they hate the AWS test, because a fair amount of the AWS tests have, billing components and cost components to it, where it's something that those engineers never had to really think about before in their traditional, network designs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Gary, let me add one more thing. I think it's interesting that we have customers all the time. This shows kind of where AWS plays in different space than customers are used to. Is we'll get on a call where we'll have a customer who's spending $1 million a year buying CSR 1000Vs, which are little mini routers to get to the cloud, right? And they're buying them off a marketplace at list price. And then eventually AWS or one of us on the phone start realizing, oh, let's talk together and see what we can do and see if it's a better deal for it. And then we get on the phone with Cisco and AWS, and neither one of us know who's buying those inside the customer, because it's some business unit that has a need to spin something up in AWS, and they're buying these CSRs, and nobody knows who's buying them. And we've got to kind of figure that out, and they're not securing them. They may not be using them the right way and securing them the right way. So, there's another angle where people use our technologies, and we need to sort of help them secure it and not hurt themselves by accident.
Yeah, I sort of use I think you guys probably heard me say this before, but there's sort of these two parallel universes, or I guess it was proven yesterday that there's an alternate universe, but there's these two universes that there's sort of the cloud guys and then the traditional IT guys. The cloud guys are used to buying stuff as a service, paying by the minute, paying by the hour, and buying it from a marketplace. You have the IT guys and not using a partner. You have the IT guys that are sort of used to working with, a VAR. I know it's a dirty word sometimes, but, working with a VAR, having a partner, and, procuring equipment, getting a PO. And this other team is used to this very frictionless way of doing stuff on the marketplace. So trying to get those two groups, they have to come together to talk, to make a solution work. There's always interesting conversations. So a lot of times we play the middleman there and get the cloud guys to understand what has to happen with the IT guys, and the IT guys to understand why the cloud guys are thinking this way. So we play a lot of, I guess, being neutral Switzerland in the middle, trying to help both of those organizations within the company to be successful.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a similar dynamic to what 10 or 12, 15 years ago when VMware kind of came out. It was this grassroots kind of campaign where people still had physical servers, but they could load up some VMware and kind of extend the use of their physical infrastructure and be able to deploy more servers. And it was like, wow, I don't have to wait to go buy new physical machines. I can deploy new servers. Wow, isn't this great for IT? And then they realize now I've got this, Microsoft licensing spend that's going out because there's no controls there. And so there's this balance between the ability to move fast with the right levels of oversight and governance and visibility and control and things like that. So that's obviously, part of what we're trying to do with our customers is, hey, let you run as fast as you can, and let's provide you that level of visibility and governance and control so that CFO doesn't go crazy, that the security guys don't go crazy, but the DevOps guys can still move fast. And that's an interesting balance to try to strike.
I always find it really ironic that Microsoft is AWS is one of the biggest resellers of Microsoft software, right? They sell a lot of Microsoft software to run on AWS, which to me is, so ironic that it's like that. But a lot of Microsoft runs on AWS.
Yeah, for sure. So along those lines, part of what we're doing, kind of back to this environment, and Steve, I'm going to come to you with this question, but this environment within AWS where you have so many configuration controls, essentially, so many unlimited ways that you can deploy an environment, but also back to that 99% of the errors are going to be back to the customer side. We're providing some services that provide, kind of a view into that for our customers and identifying where they've made some errors from a security best practice checks. Steve, I'm wondering if you can talk about just some of the areas you see most often or that are most significant, open up the most holes that customers are not applying best practices from a cloud security perspective.
Yeah, so a couple things. First, I will say, as if there are any security guys on the phone, we're used to being invited last to the party. Somehow the guy with the giant rule book who's telling you no all the time and saying, you can't do anything, clean this stuff up, is always the last guy. So, it's true with every technology that's ever come out. You got the kind of early adopters that run and they're having fun, and then we come in and ruin the party. So Commander Buzzkill here, officially. So, the things that we see, I think Ethan said it. I think that Tish probably said it. I think everybody said it. So everybody on the phone can just answer problems. Too many admins, way too many admins, no multi-factor, no password policies. We're just opening this up to the Wild West. We have open network access, so ACLs that are just wide open for dangerous any kind of access, and then kind of at the bottom of the list is nobody's turning encryption on their S3 buckets and that kind of stuff. So those things are that's security kind of 101, but like I said, this is not a new problem with new technology. We kind of have the early adopters, and those guys run fast, they move quick, and they're having a good time. In fact, one of the things about the cloud was that, how easy it was and how Amazon's got us protected. And I think we talked about that earlier. And the reality is they're protecting what they're in charge of, but they're not protecting this. So, those are the things we're seeing. It makes me just not be able to get sleep at night as a security person when I know entire companies have everybody as an admin, and they're distributing programmatic key access, like public-private key access on these accounts as well. So those are the big things. I think they're very big things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I think you'd agree, multi-factor authentication is still one of them that, isn't as ubiquitous as it probably should be at the at how low of a cost that technology is, and what a problem it is that lost or stolen passwords are from a breach perspective. It's
the amount of problems it fixes is huge, right? So whether you use Duo or another product, it's huge to just put MFA not on just start with the admin account, start with the root account, but make sure you have it on everybody's account. There's just no reason not to do it these days.
Yeah, I agree. So Tish, I'm going to come to you with this one. This is security buzzword. It's important to have good buzzword conversations if you're doing a happy hour webinar like we are. So zero trust is a big one out there. Steve and I have talked about it a lot over the last 6 months or so. Some of the current cloud blog posts and things that you see from on the Cisco side is referencing kind of Cisco's concept around what zero trust is. So I'm going to ask you maybe just to help from a Cisco perspective to define what zero trust really means and how Cisco and its technology can help protect our cloud customers or the AWS customers in the cloud.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks to marketing, zero trust is a nice little buzzword we like to use. But for anybody from a historical perspective, the concept of zero trust was birthed from this philosophy known as the principle of least authority. And thankfully, zero trust, the definition of it is its name. So the idea of it is that it's not necessarily a single product, but it's more so of a security framework. So you trust no one, quote unquote, from a security measures perspective. So user trust, is not granted until the user is authenticated and authorized. So that's kind of the conceptual idea of what zero trust is. Now, I'm not a saleswoman or anything, but fun fact, nice to know that Cisco does have a sales play for zero trust, and I call it the big 3 W's. So workforce, workloads, and workplace. So how do you secure access to those 3 big W's? So securing access from a workforce perspective, we leverage Duo. And just like Steve mentioned, everyone should have it, not just the identity and access root user or anyone that has the AWS console credentials. Everyone needs to really have it. Of course, here at Cisco, we eat our own dog food, so we have it. It's quite beneficial and very easy to roll out. Once again, I'm not a saleswoman, but if you ever want to demo it, hit us up. We're more than happy to do so.
She knows salespeople.
I'm not a salesperson, I promise. But
a salesperson, but she knows some people.
I know some people that know some people. Then we have Tetration, which is really, I think Tetration is just a really cool product. This is our secure workloads, product, but it's very cool because it really deals with that east to west traffic. We're traditionally used to securing north-south traffic, and now when you kind of expand that conversation and extending your data center to the public cloud, you now have east to west traffic. So how do you really secure that? So Tetration really addresses that answer, and there's so much more built into Tetration. And then last but not least, this is securing your workplace. It's not necessarily a security product. It's more so on an enterprise perspective, but that's software-defined access. And that's more so around your secure connection, right? So how are you actually connecting to these public cloud infrastructures, and is that secure? So we don't have a long process when it comes to zero trust and our methodology around it. It's a 3-step process, but that's really how Cisco addresses securing our customers that have their data in AWS, how they can really implement a zero trust model and what that really means for their VPCs, their data that's hosted there, and how to create a secured practice overall.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, conceptually, it's that, hey, let's just assume you're a bad guy, right? And then create all the firewalling and the structure in front of it. So there's a lot to that. But that's great stuff. So thanks for that. So we've got, looks like about 7 minutes or so left until the top of the hour. So obviously want to be cognizant of our attendees' time, and thanks for everyone for for being with us. Ethan, we've done some, had some interesting involvement with some deals around the ASAV and some of our cloud customers around numbers of VPCs and users and things like that. And thought maybe you could just share, kind of anecdotally, a couple of the things that we've done there just to give maybe some context to the audience in terms of, kind of how we're taking some of the Cisco technology play, helping our customers at AWS deliver value back to their organizations.
Sure. I think, we're putting together a couple of case studies for some recent, work that we've done. I think, one of them is part of the whole, shelter in place, work from home scenario has been, again, the whole VPN solution. One solution we've seen for customers where they, didn't have the bandwidth into their head end, or needed more users to get access to their resources in AWS was deploy ASAV in AWS. That way their end users are still used to using the AnyConnect client. They didn't have to do a new VPN client. They were able to push down the policy, and all those users were able to securely connect back to those resources without having to buy a bigger router or buy new bigger bandwidth pipes to the to their office kind of thing. So that's a recent, case study we've done. I think I saw one of our customers sign up, so I'll protect the innocent. They needed to move out of a data center and had ASAs, but didn't want to redo all the VPN connections and relearn a new firewall or a new VPN concentrator. So again, easy solution for them. They were a SaaS application provider. Had the application with AWS, wanted to move the users' connections from their data center to there, and very easily, same methodology, same tools, same configuration they used before. We're able to transition from on-prem to the cloud without a lot of heavy lifting. Obviously, there was some config work to do, kept some of our guys up late at night, but they were able to move those connections over. So another example of how using the same common interface, common tools made it easy for this customer to successfully meet a deadline and serve their customers well at the same time with as little interruption as possible, because they were providing a critical application to their end users, to their end customers actually.
Yeah, no, those are neat case studies, and I think the selfish plug I have there is with the expertise that PTP has on the Cisco side and the AWS side, and obviously being longtime consultants, and the fact that we're a quick, nimble organization, we've been able to help a lot of organizations during this time get things done quickly with some assistance from whether it's configurations or deployment of new technologies. So obviously that's a big part of what we do and the value that we add, and it's fun to see things like that come to light. So I think probably last question, and Steve, I'm going to come to you. This is kind of near and dear to our heart as the managed services guys at PTP, but some of the things that security is a never-ending effort. So we talk about policies, and we talk about products to deploy in terms of environment. But then obviously there's once you plug them in, they've got the right configurations. Now all of a sudden they're producing data, and they're producing events and logs, and you got to make a decision on when to react to those. So just wanted to see if you could just, in general, kind of discuss with some of the critical elements of security detection that your team conducts for our customers in the cloud, and just kind of conceptually what we're doing, how we're connecting to that data, how it's being analyzed, and then what we kind of deliver back to the customer.
Yeah, I think, the thing I will say is that, when it comes to detection and when it comes to just keeping a secure environment secure, it's about, I say audit, and then remediate. And it is, I say it 3 times because it's an ongoing effort. It's not do it once and you're done. So, I think we do a few things. We audit the cloud through a tool called Cloud Checker. We're going to audit AWS best practices through that. We're going to audit NIST 853 policies through that, and we're going to try to give you a picture of where you sit, as well as vulnerability management. So when we talk about, how we lost their traditional stuff, vulnerability management still needs to happen in your cloud environment. So you're going to load servers. You're going to need to scan devices. Bad guys and hackers are not looking. This isn't Hollywood. Everyone thinks that this hacker and he's working and he's doing all these difficult things. A lot of these attacks are purchased off the dark web. They are looking for easy ways into your environment. A good vulnerability and patching system will fill those holes and they'll move on to someone else. They have the same kind of resource constraints that we have today. They don't have enough hackers to do the jobs they want to do. So they're looking for the easy hacks. They're not spending a lot of time getting into people's environments. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to both vulnerability scanning and kind of auditing of your system for best practices. And then the last thing that I'll add to that as far as detection is just a good, what I'll call next generation security monitoring tool, monitoring and alerting tool. So a traditional SIM is great, out of the box shrink wrap. We don't use a traditional SIM. We want something that will integrate in the cloud, have cloud specific alerts. We want something though that will also be able to interface with your traditional environment. So we use a device. We use a product called Fluency. I hear good things about StealthWatch Cloud. I'm not a salesperson either, but I hear good things about StealthWatch, the Cisco product. Today we use Fluency. It has machine learning. We're going to look for activities that are nefarious. So we're not just based on signature or devices that are known. So we can quickly hook into cloud environments, whether it's Azure or AWS. We can quickly hook into new devices that come out and correlate that data and present alerts and be able to really quickly move through that. I think Ethan talked about that earlier. But those are the three things I think, when it comes from just a purely detection point of view, that's what we do well.
Yeah, I agree. As much as we want to have an easy button there of plug it in and walk away, it doesn't work like that, not if you really want a secure environment. So it's the discipline that I always say around the continual reviews and looking for vulnerabilities, addressing those, like you said, remediate. And then part of, I know what you and your team are doing is, meeting with those customers at least once every 2 weeks where you're having conversations around what's changed. We're seeing differences in logging patterns, things of that nature. And so we're trying to address those things before they become problematic. So, and it doesn't matter if it's on-prem, doesn't matter if it's in the cloud, it's a network and it's data that you've got to protect.
I think, Gary, just say remediate again, because the one thing I do want to point out is it's great if we come in or someone else comes in or you do it yourself, that you do the vulnerability management, that you do the auditing. But if you're not doing the remediation piece, you're not fixing your problems. You're just seeing that the window's open. You're not shutting the window and locking it. So, it seems simple. It seems like something, oh, well, someone told me this was wrong, I'll fix it. But it is literally the bottom of the list when it comes to security team or developers or whoever in the environment. That's the bottom of the list. It really needs to raise up to the top of the list.
I totally agree.
I know we're running over a little bit, but I think just on Steve's comment, when we work with customers with their AWS environment and we show them, we put them on our platform with our tools and we show them what what their environment looks like. We usually get the I love you, I hate you kind of thing. I love you that you found all this stuff, you showed all this to me. I hate you because now I got to fix all this stuff. So that's why the remediation doesn't happen. The amount of time it takes to remediate is usually more painful than sometimes until something really bad happens. But usually there's, they'll just whistle by the graveyard as long as they can. But usually there's a fair amount of heavy lifting that has to be done to remediate.
And that's part of what we're doing also, just again, is, we don't want to just tell you about the problem and walk away.
Help out.
I'm not really a sales guy, but we're all sales guys at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, we've actually had conversations with our customers. It's like, yeah, I've got plenty of people that will do an assessment and then walk away and tell me all the problems I have. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for ongoing improvement of security posture and hand in hand, and what can we do to help you accomplish those. So that's certainly part of the DNA. So I was going to say, we're a few minutes past the top of the hour. Any parting comments from anyone? Anything thoughts that you had that you wanted to share that didn't necessarily weren't able to based on the questions we asked?
I'm just shocked that Steve's using the excuse that he's the security guy while he's not getting invited to the party. That's all.
Is it the hat? A lot of people hate the hat. I don't know.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, want to thank our attendees for staying with us this afternoon. Really appreciate you guys spending some time with us. Like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of detail to go into the things that we're discussing, very unique cases from individual customer perspective. The Cisco team here, our team, the AWS team, obviously are willing and able to have deeper dive discussions and get into some whiteboards. So feel free to reach out to the team at PTP, and we'll be happy to set those things up for you. So with that, David, Tish, Steve, Ethan, thank you guys very much for your time this afternoon. Really enjoyed it. I know I learned a lot. I hope our attendees did as well. And hope you guys have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Bye.